The old house was filled with memories. For some reason, all of them were centered around music. The upright piano in the corner was the first thing my parents had bought when they moved in, and it was here that my dad had proposed to my mom. In this very spot, he got down on one knee, opened up a ring box, and asked her to marry him. Of course, she said yes. And not even a year later, I came along. The house had seen me grow up. I had scraped my knees on these very stairs countless times while roller skating around the house. I had practiced my first dance in the living room, the same room where my mom had found out I was going to be born. This house had witnessed every important moment of my life, which is why it felt so right to hold my wedding reception here after marrying the love of my life, James. We had invited everyone we knew and loved. Even though the guest list had been long, the party had gone off without a hitch. My friends and family had danced and partied until late into the night. And then the new married couple had slipped away from all the festivities, unable to take their eyes off each other. We had made love for the first time in that very same bedroom, where my parents had told each other their vows to stay together forever. The morning after, we had woken up just before sunrise and made breakfast together, talking about how perfect everything had been. When the sun rose, we stood at the window in the kitchen and watched as our guests started to leave. We waved to people we knew and called out our goodbyes until the driveway was empty and we were alone again. I looked over at James, who was smiling at me, his eyes shining with happiness. "What?" I asked him, raising an eyebrow. Leaned in and kissed me. "Just thinking," he said when he pulled back, "how lucky I am to have found a woman like you." His words made me blush and I turned away to hide it. I felt lucky to have found him, too. It had been a whirlwind romance, but from the first moment we had met, I knew he was the one. Now standing there hand in hand, watching the sunrise together, I couldn't help but think how incredibly happy I was to be spending the rest of my life with him. "Come on," James said, breaking me out of my thoughts. "Let's go see what kind of mess we left in the house last night." I laughed and nodded. It would take a while to clear out the decorations, so we'd better get started if we wanted to finish today. Walked through the now empty house, I started noticing things. Glasses were lying on the floor where they'd been knocked over during the party. Some decorations were bent and wilted. A few of the petals from my wedding bouquet were on the ground. And then I saw something that made my heart sink. In the middle of the living room floor was a single high heel. I knelt down to pick it up and turned it over in my hands. It was one of mine. One of the worst memories of my childhood came flooding back to me. When I was 12 years old, I had begged my parents for a pair of these shoes. I remember wearing them around the house constantly and dancing around in them until I wore a hole in the soles. The day I had gotten them, I had come straight home from school and ran into my parents' room. "Look," I had said proudly, showing them my new shoes. But instead of praise, I had heard yelling. My dad had been furious. "Where did you get those?" he demanded to know. Mom and I both knew I had stolen them from a store, but neither of us said anything. My dad had always been quick to anger, and I was terrified of what he might do or say next. Then my mom had stepped in front of me and faced my dad. She had put her hands on his arms and tried to calm him down. But then he had slapped her. The memory had hit me so suddenly that I dropped the shoe and stumbled back. James knelt down beside me and took my hand. "Hey," he said softly. "Are you okay?" I didn't respond. Instead, I stood up abruptly and fled to the bedroom. Could hear James calling my name, but I ignored him. I locked the door behind me and slid down onto the bed, trying to control my breathing. I didn't want to upset him. I had been so happy yesterday. Why couldn't I just let go of this horrible memory and enjoy my perfect day? Suddenly there was a knock on the door. I jumped and whipped my head towards it. Who could that be? Surely James wouldn't be coming in here so soon. Then I remembered my sister. She had stayed over after the party. Maybe she was looking for me. "Come in," I called out. The door opened, and my sister walked in. She was holding a glass of water in one hand and a pill bottle in the other. "Hey," she said, walking over to me and sitting down on the edge of the bed. "You okay, Mom? And Dad are looking for you?" I shook my head. "No, I'm not okay, I whispered, burying my face in my hands. She reached out and touched my hair, and I could feel myself start to cry. Tell me what's wrong, she said softly, and I did. I told her about seeing the shoe and how the memory of my dad had come back to me, causing the panic attack. When I was done talking, my sister reached out and squeezed my hand. Don't let him win, she said. Don't let his memory ruin your happiness. You deserve so much more than what he gave you. James loves you, your son loves you, your mother loves you, I love you too. Don't forget that, I nodded, wiping away my tears. I didn't want to be defined by my past. I wanted to focus on my future with James. After a moment, my sister got up to go. See you later, she said. I waved goodbye. As I watched her leave, I heard a knock at the door again. I froze. I didn't want to see anyone else just yet. I started to call out for them to go away, but the knocking continued. I got out of bed and walked over to the door. Through the peephole, I saw James. He was looking at me with concern etched on his face. Without hesitation, I unlocked the door and he stepped in. Hey, he said softly. Are you okay? I shook my head. I'm sorry, I whispered. I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't seem to stop crying. He cupped my face in his hands and looked deep into my eyes. It's all right, he murmured. You don't have to pretend to be happy for me. I know something's wrong. I couldn't help but smile a little at that. No one had ever told me that it was okay not to be happy. Usually people would force a smile on my face and pretend like nothing was wrong. But James wasn't doing that. He was being honest and open, and it made me feel safe. He led me to the bed and we sat down together. I told him everything, every secret thought that had been plaguing me since I was a child. As I spoke, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. When I was done, James wrapped me in the tightest hug ever. I'm so sorry, he said. I had no idea. I shook my head. It's not your fault. It's mine. I should have told you. He pulled back and looked me in the eyes. We'll get through this together, he promised. I won't let him win. I smiled through my tears. Thank you, I whispered. That day, we stayed in bed together and talked for hours. We shared stories and jokes, and we made plans for the future. By the time the sun went down, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted from my shoulders. From that day on, I made sure to never keep anything from James. I learned that it was okay to not be okay, and that it was even okay to ask for help. I also learned that I was stronger than I thought I was, and that I didn't need anyone else's approval to be happy. All I needed was James by my side. Years passed, and I never forgot about my first husband. I still missed him sometimes and wondered what would have happened if things had turned out differently. But I knew that I had made the right decision by marrying James. He had brought so much joy into my life and helped me become the best version of myself. One night, as James and I were lying in bed together, I started hearing a sound. At first I couldn't place it, but then it hit me. It was a voice, beautiful, haunting voice that seemed to be coming from the closet. I froze and stared at James. Did you hear that? I whispered. He nodded slowly. What was that? I asked. James shrugged. I don't know, he said. Maybe it was just a dream. But I knew what I had heard. Every night after that, the singing continued. It was always the same song, a sad, mournful tune that seemed to echo through the house. I became convinced that it was the ghost of my first husband haunting me, wanting me to come back to him. One night, I couldn't take it anymore. I got out of bed and walked over to the closet. I opened the door and stared inside. There was nothing there. The singing continued. I screamed and ran out of the room, tears streaming down my face. James followed me and held me tight. He murmured, It's all right. It's just a dream, but I knew what I had seen. I knew that I was being haunted. That's when I decided to do something drastic. I called a priest and asked him to come and bless my house. Maybe that would get rid of the ghost. On the day of the blessing, the priest came and walked through the house, sprinkling holy water everywhere. He prayed over me and James and promised that we were protected. But that night, the singing started up again. It was louder than ever, and I could feel the vibrations in my bones. I was so scared that I didn't sleep for days. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed the ghost to stop. Finally, I went to the closet and reached inside. There was a cold spot there, and I could feel the presence of the ghost. I closed my eyes and reached out my hand. "Please," I whispered, "please let me go." Suddenly, I felt a cold breeze on my neck, and then I heard a voice. "Why won't you let me love you?" he asked. "Because I'm already in love with someone else," I replied. "You don't understand. I need to move on, but I love you," he cried. "I will never let you go." The ghost screamed, and the entire closet started shaking. Oh, I was terrified, but I stood my ground. "Leave me alone," I shouted, and then the ghost was gone. The singing stopped, and the house was silent. For the first time in weeks, I slept peacefully that night. But when I woke up the next morning, I knew that the ghost was still there. Every day I could feel his presence around me, but he never made a sound. He was still haunting me, but now he was doing it in silence. I tried to ignore him, but it was impossible. I could feel his eyes on me at all times. I was so desperate to get rid of him that I even considered leaving the house, but that was ridiculous. Why should I have to give up my home because of a ghost? That's when I came up with a plan. I decided to find out what the ghost wanted from me. I spent hours researching old family trees and marriage records until I finally found his name. It was Thomas. Thomas was my first husband. Next, I went to the local library and searched through old yearbooks. I wanted to find a picture of him so that I could get a better sense of who he was. But when I found his picture, my breath caught in my throat. It was the man I had married, but that wasn't possible. He had died years ago. Suddenly, I understood. Thomas wasn't a ghost. He was alive. Somewhere out there, I had made a terrible mistake when I agreed to marry James. I should have married Thomas instead. As the realization dawned on me, I could feel the presence of my first husband enveloping me. It was as if he were here with me, reaching out his hand and offering me a chance at a different life. I knew what I had to do. I ended things with James and set out to find Thomas. It took me months, but eventually I found him. He was living in a small town far away from the one where I grew up. And when we saw each other again, it was like no time had passed at all. We fell back into each other's arms, and I knew that I had made the right decision. Now, years later, I can honestly say that I have no regrets. I'm happy with Thomas and our life together. And although I miss my second husband sometimes, I know that I made the right choice. If you would listen to my advice, you wouldn't be suffering anymore.